Okay, so today we'll be talking about symmetry, and we're specifically going to be talking about lines of symmetry, point symmetry, reflectional symmetry, and rotational symmetry. Okay, so I'm going to give out some shapes so we can actually start working with it. So let's take a look at this one. Okay, let's try to draw a proper square. Okay, so a proper square. A proper square actually has some really unique properties. First off, it has some reflectional properties. Okay, so if I drew a line down the middle, I can map it onto itself. So a square has some reflection properties. Plus, if I drew a line across the middle, I would actually be able to map it upon itself as well. Okay, as well as if I drew it from diagonal to diagonal, diagonal to diagonal, you could actually reflect that. If you tilt your heads a little bit, you could actually see that. So this actually has 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of symmetry. Reflectional symmetry it does have. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a rotational symmetry. Okay, rotational symmetry is how many degrees can I turn all the points and see if I get the same thing. And if you notice, if I turn a square 90 degrees clockwise, it will still be the same thing. And if I actually take that and extend that to 180 degrees, okay, it will still be the same thing. So it definitely has rotational symmetry. Okay, now the point of symmetry, usually for rotational symmetry, is going to be a center point. Okay, so if you can find a center point in the object, you'll have rotational symmetry. All right, but if you cannot find the point of symmetry, it's not going to have as much. Now, this is huge because later on, in Algebra 2 and higher up math, you will need to tell the difference between an even function or an odd function. Okay, because you can do certain things with either. Now, an even function has line symmetry, and more specifically, it's going to be the y-axis. So your y-axis will literally split it in half. Okay, so that's one of the most important things about this and understanding where we're going with it. Now, that's for carry on to algebra. Symmetry, and once I get done talking about odd, I'll talk about odd first and then I'll talk about the cool things about it. An odd function will have a point symmetry, and that point will be the origin, which is some really easy stuff. Like to find the stuff, it's like, oh, that's really super easy, you know? Okay, so in other words, I could rotate it 180 degrees or 90 degrees and it would still have the same thing. Okay, usually it's going to be about 180 degrees rotation symmetry, so that's definitely going to have the rotational symmetry. The beautiful thing about symmetry is it's one of the few things that in both man-made and nature have in common is just symmetry and just how pleasing something looks. Now here's some really cool things to think about as we're working with this. Okay, if you ever go to a store, look at what is called an end cap next time. Okay, and an end cap, you'll be able to notice a couple of things. Okay, on an end cap, they hardly ever place an even amount of items. They will place an odd amount. Now, the reason being, and let's move the end cap over a little bit so this looks a little bit more pleasing. Okay, there we go. The reason why they actually do that is because of the idea behind reflectional symmetry. In other words, the left half will look like the right half. And if I take away this object in the middle, let's take away this object in the middle, I still have that symmetry, that beautiful, beautiful symmetry that's right there. Okay? Now, that's how you get people to take stuff. Now, if you take a look at this, okay, and this is a weird procedure here, okay? Okay, so on this one, if I add an even amount of objects, okay, let me move this over a little bit so it's more realistic. Now it looks nice and symmetrical, but guess what? Customers will not come by and take this away because it doesn't look symmetrical anymore. And they're like, oh, I don't want to mess with that. That looks nice and stuff. So it's weird. They won't take it away and they won't mess with it as much unless you have that even amount. Or if you have that odd amount, they'll go, oh yeah, I have no issues taking away this middle object, and look at that, it's still pretty nice, it's still in the middle. Okay, so there's some huge amazing things with symmetry and advertising that definitely come into play, and it definitely comes into play with the arts, with just something looking nice. Now, I highly recommend The Equation That Could Not Be Solved. It's one of the best books on symmetry you'll ever find. If you're really interested in art and math and seeing the melding point at which both come into play, look up The Equation That Can Never Be Solved. Okay? All right, that's it for symmetry. Just remember, look for a line symmetry or point of symmetry, or rotational or reflectional symmetry, and you'll be able to see some really cool stuff. And take time to draw the picture and draw the lines and rotate the paper just to be able to see what's going on with it. Okay? All right, that's it for geometry with symmetry. I'll talk to you later.